This week we will be looking at something that came out on ESPN. You could go to their website, open up another tab, but do not close what you're getting from us here at sportsnetusa.net. They did an all-time ESPN college softball team. That's our subject tonight. And now, in fairness to ESPN, it was a fan poll, so it wasn't the sportscasters and experts, quote unquote, at ESPN doing it. It was a fan poll. So we're going to take a look at that with our panel of experts. In the top left, as always, it is Mark Pavlovich. To his right, and I'm not really sure if that's the right on your screen, is Corey Neyland. Both of those guys have done numerous softball games for sportsnetusa.net, including the PGF National Championships and various community college softball games, including the regional and super regional softball playoffs. And our special guest from Chapman University is Coach Suzy Brazney, and she was also the former coach at Golden West College. She has coached USA softball at various levels, is involved with USA Junior, the World Championships. I mean, the resume goes on and on and on. And I'll just throw it out to you guys. Where do you want to start on the list? One thing I would have to say about the list is that if you fans sort of have a memory problem, or maybe it's that they're all younger, because the top players look very stacked to me to the last 6 to 8 to 10 years.
Well, Ed, Corey wanted me to start. First of all, hey, Corey, Ed forgot one game that we did do. I think it was Nebraska-Oklahoma softball that you and I ended up doing for the Kia Classic. You did some excellent games in softball with Ed Ford at that time. This is many years back. I did pick two coaches for my college all-star team. And I went back to the community colleges to find my softball coaches. Once a Hornet, always a Hornet. So I went back to the old days to where I thought, you know what, if I'm going to find a coach, I might as well go back to Fullerton College. And I happened to find out probably, and Coach, I'm going to ask you, if she is the greatest softball coach of all time, because, you know, when Coach Backus went over to UCLA, they claimed she was the architect over at UCLA and created the dynasty there. So that's going to be my head coach. And then I went to Long Beach City College, and I ended up getting my assistant coach, whose first name is Patty. Oh, that's right. Wait a minute. She's won 4 national championships. So my two coaches of the greatest college softball players of all time, I'm going to start off with two coaches that have 12 national championships. And, Coach, I'm going to drop it right in your lap. Being somebody that is part of that wonderful community of coaches who coach, I think, one of the greatest games in the world, softball, are these two of the top, or maybe the top 2 college softball coaches of all time?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. Those are 2 great coaches. I was around Sharon for years. I helped out with UCLA softball camps, and Patty Gasso. I coached against Patty every level until she went on to Oklahoma. We coached high school ball against each other, and then community college ball against each other, and then she went off to bigger and better. Those are definitely 2 that be at the top of the list. You can't forget Mike Andrea. Not only national championships for college, but Olympic gold medal. And I'd probably put Tim Walton in that group. He's had some good championship trophies. I love Carol Hutchins. I kind of go by great coaches by who I would love to have played for. And any of those 3, I definitely would have, besides Patty and Sharon. Sue Enquist was Sharon's right hand. And I don't think you can say Sharon Backus without having Sue Enquist right there, because they were, to me, a package deal. You know, you can't have one without the other. You had Sharon's experience and knowledge, and you had Sue's expertise on delivering the information. So I'd probably go with those five. And then, of course, I've got to go to my college coaches who are not only great coaches, but softball Hall of Famers, Carol Spanks and Shirley Topley. So I'm always going to put them at the top of the list because I chose them to be my college coaches. So that's a pretty good list
Okay.
of the top, 6 or 8 that I really think are the best coaches for our best softball team.
Mr. Neyland, you got anybody you want to throw in here?
You know what? I didn't even think about the coaches. I just concentrated on the players. But now that you brought the coaches up, Coach Brazney, what makes a great coach? Or is there a recipe that they have?
Um, Winning national championships is obviously a pretty big thing, but getting the most out of your athletes. You can have all the talent in the world, and they don't necessarily win, but knowing how to make all the levers move at the right time, at the right place, making the right changes, making the right decisions, doing everything correctly, and having your athletes play to their top level. Don't Like I said, you don't necessarily have all the best athletes sometimes, and making them great is even a harder challenge.
And coach, let's take it one step further because you are a college professor. Coaching, you're on the same thing. You're an educator. And these young women, like you did, use a game that we've thoroughly enjoyed to go to the next level. So success isn't necessarily the best top college softball player. It's what you can see, and I'm sure you've got stories that we could listen to for hours of young ladies that walk up to you and say, Coach, it's great to see you. And you go, hey, what are you doing now? And they're doctors, lawyers, instructors, engineer. That's got to be the success part for most of you women that coach college softball.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'd love to say I've won national championships as a college coach, but I look back at 30 plus years of coaching college athletes with 15 to 18 athletes on my team, and now they're bringing up the next generation of softball players, and they have a variety of professions. But I think their biggest profession, not only as ex softball players, but now they're parents and coaches of their kids, and giving the information that I helped impart on them to their young athletes. And I think that's a big success for me is being able to help the next generation.
Okay, well, I guess I'll start the team, and I'm going to take the first position. I'm going to go to the circle because that's where, through all the years, I'm the oldest one in this group. We know that. And it has always been that thing when you talk about softball, you've got to have somebody that's outstanding in the circle that can carry the team, timely hitting, and great defense. I'm a defense freak, and ERAs need to be low. So, my number one pick, well, I'm going to stay in Orange County. I'm taking Michelle Granger, and I'm putting Michelle on my team. I'm going back to the old days with Michelle. I mean, 25 no hitters, just to say that for the least, is what I'll take from her. And you take the records that she still has in the NCAA. My two pick, I don't know. I mean, everybody's telling me I should go maybe and lean towards Jenny Finch, but then when you go to Arizona and you look at her team, some of the people who look at the Arizona teams will say historically, maybe she wasn't the best pitcher that went to school there, even though her one season she was 32-0. So I'll take her because I've done broadcasting with her. Those are my two starters. I think I can win with those two arms in the circle, and we're not going to give up many runs, if any, on the team that I've started with. So I've given you coaches and my pitchers. Anybody going to disagree with me?
Well, I think you're gonna have a disagreement because I went more local with me because I went with since it was a recency bias with the ESPN All Stars with the fan voting. I went back to when I was growing up and the players I got to watch personally in the circle. So I went with two. Actually, I had a few. Kathy Van Wyk for Cal State Fullerton. Got a chance to watch her play when I was a kid. Rhonda Wheatley, who went to Cal Poly, went to Workman High School, um, and Lisa Fernandez. Those are my three picks in the circle because I went with local products and players who I watched when I was growing up, and same age as me with Lisa Fernandez. So those were three players in the circle that I went with because I think, especially a player like Wanda Wheatley, uh, who was underrated or underappreciated because Cal Poly, and those who don't know Cal Poly's history, it's an excellent program for softball. Um, will get overlooked, and I'll have a couple more Cal Poly players later on, but those are my three. And how about you, Coach?
Well, if I'm going to start any team of greatest softball players, the number one player has to be Lisa Fernandez. Not only on the mound and at third base, she was great. She was a great hitter. She was a great strategist. She was a great base runner. She was a great team player. Any team to me has got to go to Lisa. Whether she's the greatest pitcher, I think she's up there. But if I'm creating a team of great athletes that are compete every single day, I mean, obviously her numbers were great in college. I'm going to go with Lisa first. Your Rhonda Wheatley reference is awesome. Obviously, being a Cal Polyite with her, we missed each other in college, but we played on the U.S. team together. And she definitely was unique, especially with her slingshot approach. Her and Joan Joyce are the only two that I've ever really seen that have been great at that. After that, pitchers are so hard because they're so different. In my time, we played in college at 40 feet with a white ball. It was a whole different game. And then you added in the yellow ball and 3 more feet. Pitchers have more room for the ball to move. I think Michelle Granger is a great pick. She had so much movement on the ball. I did catch for her for years, which was fun, much more fun than batting against her. So Michelle would be up there for me. But you can't not look at Kat Osterman and Monica Abbott. Kat's ball moves nasty drops. Mon's got everything. So I'm going to cheat and give you those 4 as mine. Some of the ones that the podcast, after the ESPN vote, the podcast group put out some great names. They also said Debbie Doom, which I think was a great call. Also, Debbie had a great college career. And of course, I love Jenny Finch.
Nancy Evans, who still has the NCAA record for the highest winning percentage. She had back-to-back seasons of 30, I think it was 32-2 when she was there. And I mean, people think of these numbers, Coach. I mean, you look at those numbers, and I'm always mesmerized. Somebody goes, gee, I had a bad season. I lost 6 games. And
Right.
You look at somebody, they're 32-2, and you look at all these ERAs. And I'm sorry, Ed Ford, we've got a coach on the air. So Corey Neyland and I'll have our discussion tonight, whose ERAs are 0.48, 0.68, 0.98. There's nobody that's sitting there with an ERA of 1.62 that's got that many wins, that has thrown that many shutouts. I mean, and I do have to ask you, yes, great pitchers today, no doubt about it, because of the national championships. But if you really look, are the old school pitchers, and I know you talk about moving the mound in the circle, are the old school pitchers, was there just something unique about them? Because their numbers are really astronomical compared to today.
I believe pitching has gotten watered down over the years. There was a handful of great pitchers in my day, and now there's a lot of good pitchers. So, and I think a lot of it is the 40 feet. That makes a big difference in the white ball and versus yellow. But also the technology today has made the hitters better. I mean, you can analyze every single second of your swing, and you can watch tape on pitchers and see their tendencies and find out what they do. When back in the day, you just faced them, 3-4 times maybe in a year, and you had to learn quick. And you didn't have a whole lot of time. You didn't have videotape to go back and watch. You just had to go back to your memory banks and kind of go, okay, now what did they throw me in such and such situation, and nasty ball movement and all the elements. Trying to hit some of those pitchers was pretty tough.
Coach,
Go ahead.
since you brought up the technology standpoint of things, I was looking at the all-time NC2A home run list, and you don't see very many players that were even from the 90s or the early 2000s on that list. So in all your years of coaching, and you kind of hinted at it as hitting has gotten better and you have video to go back and look at. And obviously we all know that those pieces of metal that were used even 25 years ago are nothing like the multi-alloy bats that players swing today. So how much has technology really helped hitting with the bats today that are, cost $300, $400, $500, and compare that to 20 years ago when we just had aluminum, and even before that when players were swinging wood bats?
Yeah. Yeah, technology, like I said, offensively, it's made a huge difference. I mean, some of the tree trunks that we used to swing, I've brought a few old ones occasionally, and my players have taken a look at them, and they're like, what is this thing? It's so heavy. And, for us, swinging something that was 28 ounces, 30 ounces was no big deal. And today, if it's over 24 ounces, the girls are thinking you're weightlifting or something. Not only the technology of the bats and all the, rebound procedures off of the bat, but the ball is even better and tighter wound, so the ball rebounds off the bat stronger, harder. Where our white balls were so mushy that by about the third or fourth inning, you couldn't get a whole lot of bounce off the bats. And so I think that made a huge difference, and definitely that affected the home run totals because of the bat technology, but also the pitcher technology. The pitchers were so great back then.
Suzy, the other thing I think that's very true is if you look at some of the young ladies that play the game recently, there's a different physicality about these women. When Madison Shipman played, who I think one of the high school players that I watched play at shortstop, I'd match any young man against her and say, you can't make the plays that she did. Or you watch Lauren Chamberlain, Corey, or maybe the Romero sisters, and you all throw them in. Madison Shipman, when she walked up to me when she was playing at Tennessee, she showed up at one of the tournaments we were doing and said, Mr. Pavlovich, how are you? And I stood up. I'm 5'7", and she's towering over me. And I said, how are you? I thought, who is? And she goes, it's me, Madison. Lauren Chamberlain wasn't a little girl. The Romero girls, even though smaller in stature, Corey, they were in great, outrageous shape. Is that the other thing when we look at the records? I mean, we talk about it when we flip it to the male side. The women have changed over the years because, I don't know, Coach, I'm going to take you back in here. Were you 24/7, 12 months a year playing softball when you started?
No. It was definitely a different time. I played 4 sports in high school. We had seasons. I played volleyball, then field hockey, then basketball, then softball. It was separate, and you played some catch outside of softball season, but during basketball season you played basketball. And now it's 24/7. I believe the girls are better athletes, softball athletes right now. I think we were better all around athletes because you learn so much from different sports. From basketball and soccer, you learn that aggressiveness, go get 'em kind of attitude, where in softball, you don't always get that. In other sports, you're learning angles, like in soccer and field hockey, maybe you're learning, angles on the field, where if you just play softball, you maybe don't get that. But again, that adds to the technology and the weightlifting and the things, the nutrition and things like that, that we did a little weightlifting, we did a little conditioning, but we basically went out and played softball. It wasn't all about, going out and cleaning and jerking and squats and all this stuff. We did some stuff to help us stay strong, but nothing like they do today. The athletes today are definitely great specimens. They put all their time and effort for, from the time they're 5 till 25. They put a lot of time and energy and effort to become great athletes and great softball players. And it's amazing. They are, like you said, physical specimens. And all those girls, young ladies that you named are great women and great ambassadors and great softball players.
Well, Corey, let's move on. I'll give you. I already named two of the girls that are on my team, two of the young women, and I put Madison Shipman on there. Are her numbers outrageous? No, her numbers are very, very good. 425 as a senior, 375 as a junior. You look at her as when she played as a sophomore. She was at 345 as a freshman. She didn't play that often. She only batted 325, but her defensive prowess, besides her offensive gifts, and she did she did hit a couple winning home runs in the College World Series. I ended up putting Madison on my team. That's one of my dark horse players on the team. And Lauren Chamberlain, I can't have Lauren not be on this team. A talented woman that every time she got to the plate, you expected her to hit a home run. It's one of those players that, the long ball's the game. Everybody loves it. I miss the bunt, Coach, in softball. I miss the bunt. I really do, and the squeeze plays. But the long ball. So those are two of my players that I've got on my team for that all-college team. And you know what? I gave you my coaches. I gave you my pitchers. I'm dominating this. So, Corey, I'm going to get out of the way for a while. I'm going to let you and the coach sort of take over the rest of this team.
Nah, do it. I was just going off of you because I didn't know if we were going to go to shortstop next or we were going to first base.
I'm not doing it. I'm too old, man. I get lost. I'd name off 9 shortstops if they played the best.
So if we're not going to go, we'll go position by position because, Coach, you played catcher and you played third base. From what I read from your bio and watching you play back in the day at Cal Poly. When you look at a catcher, what makes a catcher special in softball?
I'd have to go to leadership is got to be a big portion of it. Taking charge of the field, taking charge of the team. I think that's why a lot of catchers become great coaches, is because they're used to leading. The next thing would have to be working well with the pitcher, because your job is to make the pitcher look great. And whatever you need to do, you need to give good targets and frame pitches and block balls and communicate with your pitcher, make sure they're getting out of the game what they want to get out of the game, with the pitches they're throwing. And then obviously great calling ability, knowing the other teams, knowing what to call, even though times have changed and catchers don't get to call games as often. I think they still need to know the hows and whys of why things are being called. Great throwing arm, great movement. My catcher is always going to be Stacy Newman because she did it all. Not only was she a great hitter, obviously, but if we're just looking at defensive skills, even though she was 6 foot, she got as small as I did at 5'6". She munched down there a little low, out of the umpire's way. She was a great framer. She was a great caller. She was a great blocker. She had a great arm. Stacy is always going to be my pick behind the plate on any team.
Okay, and that was my pick also. I just don't know how you pick another player at that position. That was the easiest position for me to pick, was the catcher, because so no one dominated like her. So Mark, I don't know if you went position by position.
No, I didn't. But you've already got my first baseman. So I'll just move on because we know Lauren Chamberlain's your first baseman on this team. So we got a pitcher, a catcher, a first base person.
If you do scroll through some of the whatever we might want to call them fan comments on the ESPN all-time player list, one of the fans mentioned the lady who's with us tonight as somebody that should be included in the catcher position. So I just want to make sure that I threw that in.
Well, I appreciate that.
That was my second pick.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Yep.
You're late,
the funny
Corey.
thing though is I didn't catch in college. So
right. Wait till we get to
for
third
me,
base.
I mean, yes, I caught, and that's my main position. But in college, I played 2 years of shortstop and 2 years of third base. So that's kind of throws a little wrench in that. But whoever made that comment, I'm going to have to hunt them down and send them some, 6-pack of something.
And Coach, this just shows you don't want to have Corey on second base for the winning run. Because as you can tell, he gets off the bag really slow. Ed Ford would have to be the pinch runner on that. because he knows I'm out there. I'm going to score. Corey's going to go, wait a minute. Were you waving me home? Come on, Corey. You were a little behind on that one. You're getting old on me.
I'm waiting for today's player just to hit a home run so I can walk home. Okay,
There you go.
There's no more bunting. So you mentioned first base, and you have Lauren Chamberlain there. It's one of those things where Coach, you mentioned Lisa Fernandez, and how that's where you start your team. She was there at first base for me, but I was going with Lauren Chamberlain and Sue Lewis because I wanted to mix it up. Because I just think we're all going to have the similar picks. So we're going to get some names in there that many may not know. So Sue Lewis would be my pick at first base since you guys have yours. I'll take Sue Lewis because I watched her growing up. And she was just one of those players that I will always remember as a really dominant figure.
Yeah, I had two first basemen that were so even and did things so well. They were both great hitters, both great at first base, did the splits for you and stretched and ran the bases pretty well. Sue Lewis is actually one of them, and the other one is Sheila Cornell. And they both were home run hitters, but they had great gloves at first base. You could throw the ball anywhere near them, and you knew the ball was being picked up. You didn't even have to worry if the ball slipped out of your hand. You knew that ball was being caught by either of those two great athletes and great hitters on top of it.
So Mark, you have second base. I know you already mentioned your second baseman, and so I was going through tiers. So I know you're going to have Sierra Romero there.
Yeah. I got the Romero girls. I thought I'd bring a little youth because I knew we would go back. And these are about where you mentioned a lot of the players that you watched. Realized when I went through the PGF, I got to watch Coach. It was so much. We did so many years of the PGF. I got to watch these young women, these little girls walk up and start playing softball. 8.5 years he did it. So we got to watch them play. And then it would be to the next level. So when the College World Series came around, Corey can even tell you, because he would show out there, we were like a bunch of old uncles watching our nieces play softball because we saw them play as freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and then they got taken. And the coaches would come up the PGF. We couldn't really discuss players, but you'd say, what are you looking for? This is what I try to find in a player and everything else. And then you'd be noticing that they kept showing up at the same game that you're at. And you'd think, okay, well, what are you looking for? They'd go, well, I really need some infielders. And then in the back of your mind, you'd say, oh, she's got to be looking at. And so, Corey, I saw them play and I saw them grow up. And then attitude-wise, Coach, you talked about competitors. I think talk about these young women hated to lose. There was no doubt about it. And as a softball coach, I've been told by many, you talked about Carol Hutchins. I asked Carol one time, what do you look for in a player? I thought you could say arm, speed on the base. First thing out of her mouth was, I look for attitude, is what she told me. I look for attitude. I find young women that have to have the right attitude to play softball. So that's why I took the Romero.
Coach?
Yeah, I love Sid and Sierra. They're both great athletes. A lot of the younger athletes that you're naming, I got a privilege to coach on the junior national team. So most of them were seniors in high school, freshmen in college, and then it made it so much fun watching the College World Series throughout their careers because I got to see them when they were just starting college. And Sid and Sid is one of them, Lauren Chamberlain, Maddie Shipman. I mean, you're naming Allie Carta, a lot of those guys that came through those junior national team programs and then getting to see them on the big stage. It was just so much fun. It makes the College World Series even more fun to watch when you have someone to root for. That makes it a lot of fun. When you're talking about second baseman, I think Sierra is great. Sierra and Sid both are great at second base or any position you put them at, and great competitors. A few names. Second base for me had a lot of great names. And I'm of course going to go old school a bit besides Sierra Romero. I'm going to go to Julie Smith. I'm going to go to Pam Newton. I'm going to go even further back. And not even sure where she played college ball because I played against her in the women's major division of ASA, was Allison Rio. She played for the Stratford Breakettes. She had such sure hands that, anything in her range, she was going to make the plays. She probably didn't get a whole lot of notoriety because she wasn't that noted for her hitting, but defensively she was so great. And then I'm always going to go to Lovey Young. She was so smooth that you really didn't think she was trying very hard. Like you almost were like, God, is she being lazy? But she was just that smooth that she'd make the plays and made them look so darn easy.
What about, since we're at second base, what about Jenny Dalton, Coach? I mean, is Jenny Dalton somebody you would put in that breath when you look at a second base
Yes.
person? Okay.
Yeah. I didn't get to see Jenny quite as much because she's in the age group that I was kind of still being involved playing, and it wasn't really in the selection committee coaching side of things. So I didn't see her as much, but looking at her numbers, they're pretty damn amazing.
Okay.
So let's move on to the shortstop. Get that other middle infielder. Is there really
Well, we already
another
got
pick
mine.
besides Dot Richardson? Or
Oh
no?
yeah, I
Madison
mean,
Chapman.
yeah, yeah. I mean, Dot's definitely always going to be at the top of my list, or one of the ones at top of my list, because of her leadership, because of her bat, because of her energy. They actually, for years and years, people have mixed the two of us up because at one time we were at third and short next to each other. We're kind of the same height and the same build and the same energy and the same big mouths. So a lot of times people would walk up and say, "Hey, aren't you Dot Richardson?" And sometimes I'd say yes, just to mess with people. But yeah, Dot's going to be at the top of my list. But Natasha Watley was so smooth. I mean, again, she kind of like Lovey, didn't look like they were working super hard because they didn't have to. They were so smooth and so elegant and got the job done. But somebody else I've got to put in there that people know from USA softball, but not from college ball because she only played community college ball, was Crisco Bustos. And I also kind of had her on my third base list also because she ended up moving over to third base. But what was amazing about Crystal to me is you don't look at her as a shortstop because of her size as she got older. She was young. As a youngster, she was small and fast. As she got older, she was quick. But what she did better than anybody else was anticipate what the play was going to happen, how it was going to set up. I was watching her during the time frame when I was on the selection committee, and I noticed that she would anticipate where the ball was going to be hit before the ball was hit. So people would think, oh, you just happen to be in the right place at the right time. But no, she read the play so well. She read the pitch. She read the batter's swing that she was already moving as the ball was coming off the bat and would be in the right spot and had a cannon for an arm. So I've got to keep Crystal up there with Dot and Natasha as great shortstops.
Okay, and it's funny you mentioned Crystal because with looking at all the players and the teams, there's a list that you really have, and there's not really one player. So at each position, you mentioned Lisa Fernandez, pitcher, first and third. When we get to third base, here's where I revise my list because I had Crystal at third, I have you at third, and
That's what I
Lisa,
had.
yeah, and Lisa as my third baseman on my all-time team. So before we get into marks, Coach, talk about or not talk about your history as a player. Since we have you as a third baseman here on an all-time team, your best moments as a player and standout games or performances for you personally.
Wow, you know what? I knew that question was coming, and my brain kept going to all the off the field memories with teammates, the camaraderie, the bus rides, the hotels, the rain delays, and so I had to keep kind of taking my brain to, okay, let's go to the best games. And Cal Poly's probably my favorite game. We came back during the pony tournament that now I believe is called the Judy Garmin Classic or the Kia Classic, or I'm not sure what it's called now, but back then it was called the pony tournament. And little old Cal Poly came back and ended up winning that tournament. And we were all seniors. A bunch of us were seniors. and we came from behind and won the game. And so my college memory, that was probably my favorite college memory, was coming back and winning that championship. Going on from there, oh God, it's so hard. There's so many great games. Winning gold medals at Pan American Games, winning at World Championships. Um, I'm probably going to go back to a game that I actually was catching in 1995 when the first Olympic team was doing their tour. They came to Southern California, and they played against this ragtag thrown together team that I think we were called the Killer Bees. And we played over there at Mayfire Park, which is now Lisa Fernandez Field. And we shocked them and ended up beating the Olympic team in a walk-off fashion because Amy Stewart fooled them tremendously. She had this inside curveball that she threw at the left hip of the batter, and they'd back out of the way, and it ended up right over the corner of the plate for a strike. And she just had them baffled. And I remember hearing she had her baby 6 weeks prior to that or something. So she baffled them. We got enough hits to win the game. That was a big, exciting moment to win another game that probably unexpected. I think those kind of games are always the ones that are more fun when you're not expected to win the game. Those are the two biggest ones that come to mind as an athlete.
And as a coach, well, before you go, Mark, and as a coach, moving on, what would you take away as the biggest keys? Not just one, but biggest moments as a coach.
Winning the junior world championships. We did it. I coached the 2007 and 2011 junior teams, and both tournaments Japan was expected to win because they had won the prior one, and we knew we had great teams, and we knew we were going to compete, and I had no doubt that we were going to win those, even though everybody at the tournaments was like, Japan's going to win, and playing them in the championship games both times, and ended up beating them both games and getting those gold medals in 2007 and 11. Those are great moments because, of course, you always want to beat the best, and they still are our most competitive country that we play against. And probably the biggest moment that I'm going to remember from the 2011 team is Coach Karen Johns brought in a pinch hitter with the bases loaded. She hadn't gotten a whole lot of at-bats, and she just had a feeling because she saw her take batting practice, and dang, Cheyenne Tarango came through with a grand slam that put us ahead of Japan and eventually to win that gold medal. And that was probably the biggest game as a coach that I could go back to. I still see the pictures of me with Cheyenne running around first base, and I'm still jumping up in the air. And I just knew, because I think it was like the bottom of the sixth, so I think we just had to go back and get the last 3 outs. And that moment as a coach was probably the most amazing and fulfilling at the same time.
Coach, you bring up a name of a player that we know very well because we used to do the PGF for Dan Hay, the coach at Canyon. Scott Beck, who's not here tonight, used to talk about Cheyenne Tarango all the time for the simple reason Dan Hay just rode her arm in the circle. Yeah. That was his only pitcher. And Scott used to say the only problem that Cheyenne had in high school is she didn't have the killer instinct somebody needs to have in the circle. And that if she ever decided to do that, she would be an outstanding pitcher for any softball team. Of course, we know she played as it moved on. She was just in Australia playing in the professional softball over in Australia because her brother plays at Fullerton College. So it's fun to hear a name that we know that you just brought up. Hey, guys, I Coach, and I'm going to ask you, because one of the games we left off at third base that I also had on my list, and Corey, you should know her because she was a coach at a championship high school game that we called, I think it was Orange Lutheran that she was at, or she's at, can't remember if she's at Orange Lutheran or not, but her name is Tony Mascarenas that was over in Arizona, one of the top third base players at Arizona. She's on every record here at Arizona. I sound like an Arizona fan here. But, Coach, did you see her play? Because here's somebody talking about attitude. even as a high school coach, you'd go to talk to her and you'd get this snarky answer from her. And you would go, man, I'm not sure I want to talk to her. Same with Donna Lee that coaches up at Valencia by Magic Mountain. But did you get to see her play, and what sort of player was she?
Oh yeah, I actually played against Tony. That's the nice part of having a long career like I did. I got to play against a lot of the greats from the 80s all the way to 2005 when I retired from fast pitch. And so I got to play against a lot of the great players. And Tony's definitely up there. And yes, she had a great attitude, like, that killer instinct and get out of my way. We're going to win no matter what. And she would definitely be one I'd put toward the top of my list. And even as we're talking, her niece, Alyssa Palomino, I mean, that kid can play. I just love to watch her hit, and she's got Auntie's fire. And I hope she continues playing, because I think she's got a nice long career after she finishes at Arizona. But yeah, Tony was a great player, and she's developing great players in, I believe it's the Bat Buster organization, because even her 12 and under and 14 and under kids, they're already got that killer instinct.
Good. I just wanted to get her name in because, Corey, we've been around that coach many times.
Yeah, and you talk about having a long career. I mean, you've played in 2005 when you retired. What was it about the game of softball that kept you playing all that time?
I love being between the lines. I like this last 3 months or 4 months or however long this COVID's been going on has been really stressful, because not being able to get back on the dirt, and not only as a coach but as a player. I actually still play ball. I play senior women's small ball, slow pitch, and have won some senior Olympic championships. And one of the funny stories I was actually going to tell you is, a bunch of us that were all kind of that first Title IX scholarship athletes in the late 70s, early 80s, 40 years later, we're still all playing ball together. So it's kind of cool that I'm playing with, UCLA and Cal State Fullerton and other Cal Poly players and Utah State. And, a lot of us that were that first rung of Title IX babies, and now we're still playing ball because we love it. And I think we had something a little different than the kids these days. The love of the game, because of the love of the game. We didn't play really for college scholarships because they were so new. We didn't play for the chance of playing in the Olympics because didn't happen yet. We didn't have a chance to play professional because we all missed the Lionette days. Those were I was, I think, 8 or 9 when the Lionettes finished their time here in Orange County. So we played just because we loved it, and everybody worked, and then you played ball on weekends. We had to fundraise because you had to pay for yourself. There was no big dogs paying for you in order to play all day and practice all day. We got practice in. I mean, there's times that we'd go out on like a tennis court with lights on in order to get our pitchers some practice, or you'd find the side of a ball field with slow pitch going on. And I really think that's why a lot of the women that played in my era played for longer, played, into their 30s, because they loved it, and it was part of them, and it was so deep down inside that, when you're away from the field, you're missing it. And like I said, this last 3-4 months have been killer, because it's like, I just need to get on the dirt. I actually went and got a net and a tee so I could at least get some swings in, just because I needed some softball in my life. And I think this is the longest since I was born that I wasn't on the field, because I had 5 older brothers. So I grew up on the Little League field and have been on the field every day since for the last, almost 60 years. So yeah, it's crazy. And I think that's part of the longevity, is that the deep down love, and not that the kids today don't love the game, but I think they love it for a different reason. I think they love it to help them get their college education paid for, which is great. I mean, we would have loved to have that ability to get our education paid for. We got some help. We got some scholarship money, especially at Cal Poly. We didn't get a whole lot, but that's okay. We played for the best coaches in the country, so that was okay. But the kids today are playing for a different reason. They're playing more for the business side of it. Now I'm going to get my college education paid for. I'm going to have a chance to maybe play professional and and play for, another 6, 8, 10 years as a professional softball player, which would have been great. But I think we did it more for the love of the game.
Yeah, and I can
Coach,
growing up. Oh, I was going to say, Mark, growing up before you asked
go
that
ahead,
question,
Corey.
I remember the those times when you're in the tennis courts with the lights out. You mentioned Pam Newton earlier, and I mentioned Sue Lewis. I grew up watching those two players specifically with the traveling team with Pam's father, and my grandfather was a coach of that team. So when you talk about the love of the game, we talk about the love of the game. Is there a best thing that's happened since? And we're going to go back to a Title IX question in a moment. Is there a
Oh, wait.
best thing? Is there a best thing that's happened
So my
in the game of
question.
softball from then and now?
Ask me that. Say that question one more time.
I didn't know how to phrase it. Is there Is there a best thing that's happened from, let's say, the '80s, early '80s till now in softball? Is there a best thing or a best couple things that's happened?
Well, definitely getting into the Olympics was always what we were all hoping for and striving for. But it also affected different parts of the game. Like once we finally were in the Olympics, that took the best, 20 players. So those players weren't playing women's major fast pitch with us. And that's what a lot of us did after college is we continued to play ball where most of the kids, if they're not on a professional team or they're not on the national team, they don't continue to play softball. Most of my era played into late 30s, maybe even into their 40s because we had the women's major fast pitch division that we could continue playing. The Olympics came in and took some of the best athletes out of that league, so it kind of watered it down a bit, and I think it was the eventual demise of the women's major division. Now I believe they have a 23 and under division, but there isn't really that group that continues into their 30s plus that plays as competitively as we did. Basically, everybody that was on the first Olympic team played women's major ball, and that's how they stayed sharp, and that's how they stayed in shape between college seasons.
Okay.
So,
And before you get to that question,
Coach
Mark, before
Corey,
you get to it, Mark, before you get to it, is there a worse thing that's happened from back in the day to today in the game of softball?
That's a good question. Is there a worse thing? The travel ball
I
world
got
is
that answer.
crazy. You got that answer. The travel ball world is crazy. I haven't really been that involved with it until recently because coaching at Golden West College, I recruited mostly the high school kids because it was easier because we had just a certain geographical area we can recruit from. And now being involved at Chapman and coaching a bit of travel ball and seeing the psychoticness of teams and parents and fans. I think it's gotten out of hand, and I don't know if this COVID thing is going to make some families go, we don't have to be 24/7 softball. We can have families and lives and still play competitive softball. So that would probably be my not so best thing is it's gotten so
Okay.
crazy that, you got kids that are 7 and 8 that the parents are saying, all right, work hard today. You're working for that college scholarship when they should be at least till, 13, 14 playing because it's fun and learning the skills. And then, okay, now we're in high school. Now let's start thinking a little bit more about our college decisions. I mean, you've got 12-year-olds that are making college decisions, not right now because of the rule changes, but at one time you've got 12-year-olds that barely know, how to make a grilled cheese sandwich, and they're out there having to make their most important decision of their young lives. So I think that's probably the not so best part of the game since the early 80s.
Okay.
Okay, and
All right,
let's
Mark.
let's
Sorry.
sort of stick with that. No, it's okay, Corey. Let's stick with that theme because Coach Corey Neyland and I have a conversation. Like he said, his grandfather coached the game of softball. We both know Pam Newton. We know Kelly Ford at with the local universities. Here's my question. Why do our local universities, be it a Cal State Fullerton, you talked about the school you went to, why don't they grab more of these great California? I mean, every national championship team has 5 girls from California on it. why don't we have them staying here, and how come we don't have that dominant collegiate area of softball that maybe we've had in the past? We talked about Coach Backus, 8 national championships. UCLA used to get whoever they wanted. So
Right.
I'm throwing it at the coach. Why is this happening now? Why do all the girls seem like they run away out of California?
Well, I think there's great opportunities is the reason they're trying other things. Most of the Southern California kids have grown up here and that's all they know, and they want other opportunities. I think that the kids today are a lot more into the full experience of college. They want to go get away. They want the college life. They want to, have different seasons. They want different opportunities. Obviously, like you said, in the 80s, UCLA was the thing, and everybody stayed here and wanted to go there or Arizona, and I think the athletes want different opportunities. They want to experience different parts of the college life. Cal State Fullerton had great teams. They did win the national championship. They competed for other national championships in the early 80s, and they were one of the best teams. When I was at Cal Poly Pomona, it was always UCLA, Cal State Fullerton, and Cal Poly. The two of them were always a little step above us, but it was the 3 teams that competed from, like I said, from at least 80 to 85, 86. Those were the places to go, and those were the greatest teams. But I think after that, more opportunities developed, and athletes wanted to try different things.
And Mark, I know you're going to ask
I was
about
going to interrupt.
Title
I
IX.
was going to, yeah, because I really do, Coach. I mean, how helpful is Title IX? Should it be pushed even further to help young women from all different backgrounds in sports? I mean, we see baseball has become now that one sport that it used to be multi-ethnic. We don't necessarily see that on the community college or the D1 level. Softball, fortunately, hasn't had that happen to them. But how do we get Title IX to really embrace and help more young women in college to help them move on? And I mean, being a young professor, an educator, what is your feeling about Title IX, and how can it be more aggressive to help your players?
That's a good question. One of the best things about softball has always been to me that any shape and size and color and creed can play the game. You didn't have to be a certain, you didn't have to be tall like a basketball player, and you didn't have to be soccer. You didn't have to, be super fast. You could be a great softball player and not have the exact perfect body type. Title IX, I think, continues to give everyone opportunities. Unfortunately, a lot of softball teams, the way they get funded is by having great football teams. And I don't know if that's always the right thing to happen. They should be funded just because they're a great sport and they compete and they're given great opportunities for women. But I know that a lot of times great football programs help fund great softball programs. Title IX, I think it's come a long ways. Obviously, it's come a long ways. Giving more opportunities. I mean, there's a lot more softball at a lot of schools. I mean, I don't even know the number of colleges, but from all levels, from Division 1, 2, 3, NAIA, and community college level. I mean, there's so many opportunities. I would love for more money at different levels so athletes can, play and not have to worry about, trying to have a job and all the other things that go along with it. But then again, like I said, that's also kind of the bad side of it is it turns it into just the business side. I would love it if athletes went on to college and chose a school, maybe a Division III school because they love the school and they're an academic minded person, but they also want to continue their softball career also. And it's not always about the money side of things.
All right. Well, should we move on?
Weekend, Mark.
I know, Corey. Let's move on and finish our outfield because there's the one burning question before the coach goes that I asked Cody over at Cerritos College about softball, and I'm not going to let the coach get away without me asking it. But I'm going to I'll throw an outfielder, and you guys can add the other outfielders to it. I'm going to take Allison Johnson McCutcheon And everybody's going to say, Mark, you've got an Arizona theme today. But this is a young woman, when you look at her, that had eclipsed supposedly 400 marks when she played in the game. She had a batting average of 534, a fielding percentage of 992. I'll tell you what, somebody's going to hit almost 600 for me and field at 992. I'm going to take her in my outfield. I don't have her assist numbers out there, but they've got to be just as high. So at least I've got one outfielder. I'm going to let you two fill in the rest of the outfield for me.
All right, Coach, we'll start with you then.
Your Allison is a great pick. AJ was a great outfielder when you really weren't thinking a whole lot about outfielders back in the day, but she was so fast and ran the ball down well. She's not on the top of my list, but she is a great name to add. I have 3 or 4. Obviously, there's 3 spots. Laura Berg is always going to be there. She's the greatest outfielder I think that the game has ever seen. Reads the ball well, had great anticipation, will go through the fence, will dive, is a great leader, communicates with the people playing on either side of her as well as the people in front of her. Laura is always going to be one of my greatest outfielders. And then offensively, she made things happen. She slapped, she hit, she did all the things. I'm going to go kind of my new Laura Berg is Haley McClenny. I think they're cut out of the same piece of cloth. Like they have the same mindset, their same like toughness. And the more Haley plays for Laura Berg's teams when she's on the U.S. team and Laura's coaching, you can see it even more. Like she has some of the same instincts, and and Haley has a little bit more power, so that adds to her game. But I think Haley McClenny is going to be one of my outfielders. And then I have 2 more. I got to go with Caitlin Lowe. She ran the ball down. Oh boy, gosh, she ran the ball down. She was so fast, and then offensively, obviously, she could do anything she wanted. I think she could probably hit 800 if she really wanted to. And then I've got to go with probably the person that has always been the toughest out. Me as a catcher, my job was always to keep people off base and to keep the ball in the park. Even though I'm not the one throwing it, I'm still the one trying to create the ball hit to my defense. And the toughest out will always be Kelly Kretchman. Kelly could do it all. She could bunt, she could slap, she could pull, she could go oppo. She had power, she had speed, she had that moxie, has that moxie, and you just couldn't get the ball by her twice in a row in the same spot. You could think there'd be times that she'd look silly on a pitch, and you're like, oh, I'm going to go back to that spot, and she'd hit a double down the line. So and she was a great outfielder, good arm, would run the ball down well. So I kind of cheated and went with 4. But every team needs a backup outfielder.
That's quite okay
Mr.
because I
Neyland.
have the same 4. I've got the same 4 actually.
Wow.
When you start looking at the outfield, I don't know if it was better back in the day. You talk about Haley, which is good now, but I couldn't bring myself really into the 2000s with the outfield. I mean, it was just one of those things that it was so special back then because there was more variety offensively. There was more, there's a bunt situation, there's that slap hitting situation. It's not just going for the long ball. I think there was more opportunity for outfielders to really shine back in the day. And so those 4 for me were the same I picked.
Yeah. It also, if you look at the athletes that play international ball, the fences are at 220, and you can't hide people in the outfield like you used to be able to. In the 80s, sometimes you'd have a really good hitter that you really didn't have another spot for, and because the pitching
Mhm.
was so good, you could kind of hide somebody out there. That nowadays you can't. You've got to have rabbits that can go into that 220 gap. If not, teams are going to be hitting doubles and triples and killing you in the gaps if you don't have people that can run down the ball. And then I also have an honorable mention. I have Jessica Mendoza. I know she's a fan favorite.
Yeah.
She was a great teammate. I actually got to play with Jess a little bit. And she was very unorthodox. Her swing was unorthodox. Her throw was a little weird, but dang, she got the job done, and a competitor too. You wanted her drive and her oomph out there on the field.
And you mentioned besides Lisa Fernandez, who would be the best couple of the best all around players just did everything on a softball field.
That's funny. I actually do have a utility player that I know has played every position on the field. She played at, I want to say, South Carolina. Her name was Pat Duffy. Everybody called her Duffy. She played in the early '80s with me, and she was on Pan Am team. She played with the Breakettes, and she did it all. You could stick her at any spot. She mostly played third and outfield, but I saw her play short. I saw her play second. Saw her play first. I know on the Breakettes that she actually pitched and caught sometimes, and she would be one that if you're creating a team of utility players that you could put in any position, Pat Duffy is going to be one of my all-around players for sure.
Mark, did you have a utility player as well?
I did not. No. Did you?
Okay. I did, but
Are you
I
feeling
crossed
better?
it out. No. I crossed
you
out my
have?
utility players. No, I was gonna put Lisa Fernandez everywhere. So that's all. That was
Yeah.
my utility. If I didn't have her in the circle, if I didn't have her at first, if I didn't have her at third, I was just gonna, she can be my DH, she can be my flex, whatever you want. That would be my utility player. And Natasha Watley, since I had another player at shortstop. And I know Mark wants to ask you a question. So before Mark does, Coach, what trends do you see happening now in the sport of softball? I know I emailed you that as well. What do you see happening in the future, recent future?
Well, hopefully we get back on the field soon. The COVID stuff is really killing us. I'm hoping things are going to ease up and we actually get to have a 2021 season, because obviously 2020 cut everybody's season short and lives short. And I still feel bad for all the college seniors. I hope a lot of them get a chance to come back and play their fifth years. Um, the direction, like I said before, I really hope that the families during this 4-month, 3-month stint that they've been away from the field, I hope the families realize that softball doesn't have to be 24/7 to be good at it. You don't have to kill your athletes and make them have so much pressure at a young age that they don't want to play by the time they get to college. I got a lot of the girls that came to me at Golden West that by the time they got there, they had been pushed for 10, 12 years. You're going to get a scholarship. You got to get a scholarship. You got to keep working and go get a scholarship. And now they didn't get one. And now they're at a community college. And their parents were like, whatever, you didn't get a scholarship. I paid all that money for all those private lessons and all those travel teams, and just do whatever you want. And it was what I felt my job there, not only to make nice young ladies that are going to affect the workforce, but to give them the love of the game back. And I feel like that was my biggest job there, is to help them love the game and have great softball experiences, so they're going to keep that thought through the generations. I mean, I don't want these girls that are at 18, 19, 20 saying, I hate softball, I don't want to play it anymore, to then have kids and tell the kids, no, let's go do soccer or lacrosse or swimming or whatever else. So I think that trend of all the pressure that's being put on these young kids and all the problems you're seeing with 12 and 13-year-olds that are doing the unthinkable because of that pressure, I'm hoping that this good comes out of this COVID, that people realize that it's okay to take breaks. It's okay to play other sports. It's okay to not be 24/7. And the college coaches are still going to see you, and they're still going to offer you those scholarships and give you those opportunities without killing yourself.
Mark?
Okay, Coach, I'm going to put you on the spot, because in all the
Wait,
years
wait,
we've been soft.
wait. Well, hold up, Mark. Hold up. Before you put her on the spot.
Ed, could you mute Corey?
You got the stage.
Coach. Good. His sound doesn't work anyway. Coach, I got to ask you, because all the years that we've done softball, and I love defense, like I've already told you. I love the squeeze play and things like that. Being a broadcaster watching the game, and we watch it as fans, Corey and I will never claim we're experts. But I think the young women that play the game of softball are much more fundamentally sound than their counterparts that play the game of baseball. And the only coach I would get that would ever tell me that was over at Cerritos College, when we compared young kids or any age young men that play the game of baseball and compared them to the young women. And I said, who plays the game fundamentally sound? Who understands the game better? Who knows how to set up for a ground ball, how to set the back foot to make a throw, how to back up and make the throw at home? So I'm going to stick you out there now, looking at the two sports with all the young people you've watched over the years. And I've got to ask you, is softball, are those athletes more fundamentally sound in the game with a stick and a ball than their male counterparts that play the game of baseball?
Of course, I'm going to say yes because I love the game, and I think softball is an amazing game. I grew up watching baseball. We didn't have softball really to watch. Like I said, I got to see the Lionettes a little bit, but I grew up watching, the Johnny Benches and the George Brett and Brooks Robinson and those kind of guys is who I played the game based on how they played the game. I think our athletes today have the best advantage because they can watch the Lauren Chamberlains and Sierra Romeros and the Haley McClennies and the Stacey Newmans and Aubrey Monroe and all these young, great athletes. They can watch and emulate these players, and they can work on the skills. And I think the reason softball skills, like you're saying, more than the baseball is softball has gotten so into the technology side of it and the videotaping everything and the breaking down of the swing and the fielding and everything. I think softball has definitely overtaken baseball in that realm because now we've broken the game down like they used to. I think baseball athletes probably had natural skill and natural talent, but I think softball now has put the natural talent in with the technology, and I think now we've advanced past the baseball boys.
Corey, did Ed pot you back up in case you want to say anything?
I don't know. Am I potted back up?
Yeah.
You are.
Okay,
We can hear you. Yep.
I went through while researching, saw an article about the Athletes Unlimited, this new softball league that was coming out. Do you know anything about that, and how is that? Well, do you know anything about that, and is that something good for the sport?
I do know about it, mostly just with what I've read, but I've talked to a couple of the athletes that are going to be involved, and it sounds like a lot of fun. It sounds like a great concept. They're going to get paid based on their performance, not just, you're a shortstop, you're going to get this amount of money. You're a pitcher, you're going to get this amount of money. You're going to get paid based on how you do and how you perform, and I think it's going to be fun. I think it's going to be an interesting concept. The teams are going to change weekly, which I think is kind of cool. The top 4 players each week gets to draft the team for the next week, and then at the end of that week, the top 4 players get to draft for the next week. And I think there's I want to say 60 players or so that are involved, and they're all great athletes. They're all big names, and they're all ones that really love the game. Like, I think they're doing it all for the right reason, not just saying, oh, I'm going to get X amount of money. They're doing it because I'm going to show everybody I can get extra money. I can do this because I play the game right and I execute when you need to execute. And I think it's going to be a really super fun concept. I just heard that between ESPN and I think it's CBS Sports Network, all 30 games are going to be televised. So I'm really excited. I think it's supposed to start the end of August, I believe, August, September. And it's going to be exciting. The players that are involved are really flashy and amazing. And I think it's going to show a different side of the game. I think it's going to show the kids that you can have fun and be great.
That's all I got, guys. Mark?
Coach, we just want to thank you. We're going to have you back on because I'm with Corey, a little community college softball. And also, I'm going to get you ready, so I'll give you your homework assignment. We're going to go into the Olympics next time we talk a little softball, too, and talk about the political side of it, and also talk about you knowing so many of these players. Hey, what were the great Olympic teams that we've had? And talk about the other countries, some of those international players that Corey, Neyland, and I don't really know because we don't necessarily watch international softball daily. So next time we get you on the air, Coach, That's your homework so that you can educate Corey and I. And then when we're on the air, we sound a lot smarter. And that's
There
how
you
we
go.
end up being fans for the game of softball. Coach, thank you
That's
very
the
much. I've
deal.
had a ball. Corey, it's been a ball. And you know what, Coach? I love educators like you who love your sport so much, care about your sport so much, and then care about your student athletes. And I can't, Corey will tell you, I do it all the time on Facebook when I talk about student athletes. I can't thank you enough for the hours that you put in, the hours I know you don't get paid for, the hours I know you don't get thanked for, and the hours that nobody appreciates you for. Thank you from me, Corey Neyland, and Ed Ford for making sure that softball stays one of the top sports in the United States and here in Southern California. I appreciate you as an individual. Thanks, Coach. Corey, that's it for me. I'll let you win this show.
Well, again, Coach Suzy Brazney from Chapman, Golden West, Cal Poly, ASA, Pan Am Games, a softball legend we have had on this show, and we appreciate you. And thank you for coming on, and we'll have you on again. Uh, Guys, is that going to be it? Because I can end it now.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on. Like I said at the beginning, this is all kinds of fun, and yeah, I'm in for, whatever the topic is. I could talk softball for days, and I'd love to be involved. And I think you guys do a great job, because I remember the days when you came out to my Golden West games and televised our games, and how much fun it was to go back and watch those games after the fact. So I'm in for whatever. Just give me a little notice, and I'll be right here chatting about softball.
Sounds
We
great.
will definitely do that. So, Mark Pavlovich, Coach Suzy Brazney, Ed Ford, thank you very much for always getting us on the air. I'm Corey Neyland, and you've been listening to and watching Thursday. Well, we're going to have a name for this one day here on SportsNetUSA.net.